Uh, I've just sent you to a request. Can I share my PowerPoint? Okay, let's get this going. Oh, it's so good to see that you've all returned again from last week. That's really nice, and it's so lovely to see some names that I recognise. And also, welcome to the names that I don't recognise. Really good to have you here. Very nice to be at your wonderful centre, even if it is virtually. I've got a snow mountain behind me. Perhaps I'm there in spirit. It's our wonderful wallpaper. So we're on the second class of our course on becoming your best self. And it's a 6-week course, and it's based on Buddhist psychology. So it's pretty universal. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to be a Buddhist. Human emotion is universal. The wish to be happy is universal. The wish to lead a good life, to make your life worthwhile, the sense of belonging, all of these things, it's universal. Doesn't matter who we are, what we believe in. This is actually what we have in common. It's a universal human experience. And so even though this is so fundamental to our well-being, how on earth do we go about it? I mean, some things don't come naturally. We need training and we need some help, and we need the help from our Dharma brothers and sisters. Oh, I think, Isabella, there's someone in the waiting room. We don't want to have anyone left over. So what I thought we might do is I'll just kind of recap what we did last week and then see what stood out for you, how you went with the homework, the reflection sheets, and then we can get started on today's topic. So becoming your best self, yes, we all can, but we need some help in how to do it. So what we covered last week was looking at 3 levels of happiness, and we all recognize these levels. But what we find is that we get distracted on the more unstable happiness. So the hedonic happiness, what we get from the world, it's the kind of sense of contentment or well-being and enjoyment that comes from the senses, from delicious food, from good music, from a comfortable bed at night, all those things. But it depends on our conditions being right. And if some of those conditions fall away, like for instance, we get sick and we're no longer comfortable, our whole sense of happiness disappears. The second level of happiness, eudaimonic happiness is much deeper. It's about what we bring to the world. It's when we help others, we get a real satisfying sense of having done something good, of having made a difference, of having helped a fellow human being. And that sense, it's not like happy-go-lucky happiness, but that deep sense of appreciation and feeling good is something we can come back to, even if we have the flu and are uncomfortable in bed, even if we're hungry. And if we can cultivate that eudaimonic happiness, uh, slowly bringing forth all of our nascent qualities, it leads to this third type of happiness, what we become, which is a state of mind that comes from within. So it's not dependent on the conditions being right, which means it's stable, which means it cannot be taken away from us. So what we found, of course, is that if we look at the ratio, how much time we spend on our hedonic happiness, how much of our energy, what percentage of our energy do we spend on just trying to get comfortable at the expense of our inner sense of peace and satisfaction? So it's this attachment or addiction to hedonic happiness that distracts us from deeper human flourishing. And it really is a distraction. So last week we had some reflection sheets, and I'm wondering, is there anything that stood out to you? Uh, you were all uncharacteristically quiet because of the events of last week and the election. I don't know if you've recovered or not, but did looking at these different levels of happiness change your experience of that? How did you go? Who's going to be the first to put up their hand and share? Who do we have? We've got lots of people here.
Yeah, Miffi.
Go for it.
Yeah. First one, really easy. Easy to come up with things for the first level of happiness. And then progressively much harder as things went on.
So this is the gratitude journal.
Oh, the 3 levels of happiness?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So so that means that your circumstances were okay, you had good food and enough sleep and all those things.
Yeah, that's right. And it is the thing that thinking about this is all good, but what if I don't get enough sleep and then, I can't cope and, all this sort of stuff.
So with that second level of happiness of what we bring to the world, in the gratitude journal, it's almost what we receive from others as well, because there are undoubtedly people who love you. And that's something we can feel genuine gratitude for. They often our friends love us more than we love ourselves. We can be full of self-loathing, and yet they see something good in us.
Yes, yes. And maybe thinking of it more from what would someone else say about me? Is that a better way?
Yeah, that's right. And you see, those kind of friendships, what do they come from? Not just from hanging out, having good times together. They come from something deeper, don't they? Where you really support each other in life, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've got a wealth there that you can now fill in.
Yeah, thank you.
The other thing is, you can ask your friends, why are they friends with you? Like, what's the quality that you have that stands out to them? And that can kind of speak to that third level of what you become, because your friends must recognize something worthwhile in you. You may not recognize it. You may be glossing over it and dismissing it. So ask them, have the courage, ask them, why are you friends with me?
And I think it was good last week, you said ruminate on the good things and ruminate. And that's not a well-worn path in my mind, but that was a very good tip.
Oh, fantastic. Great to hear. Thanks very much, Megan.
Thank you.
Okay. So now, Peggy, off you go. Can you unmute? Yeah.
I think I might be a little confused. I didn't do the gratitude journal. I did the first questions about what the personal quality that we're looking for. And your first question was what you kind of discovered, right? What did the first question say? I can't see it on the screen anymore because
the question was, what personal quality do you want to cultivate today? What's a problem you wish to overcome? And how could this affect others?
Can I answer that one?
Yeah, sure.
Are we okay? Because I gave this a lot of thought. The personal quality that I want to learn about, that I'm taking the class for, really is how to live without fear, which I think is perhaps true for a lot of us. But what I want to, the reason that I kind of had discovered this is that I retired several years ago. When I was working, I really liked my job. So I got hedonic pleasure from that. And I also got structure from that. And I lived pretty much without fear because somebody else was telling me where I needed to be, what I needed to do, how I needed to give back. And because I'm kind of a person who likes that, somebody else sort of taking over, I was very happy when I lived in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm have to find my own happiness, my own agenda, my own how I'm going to give back, how I'm going to be happy. And that has become a very fearful thing for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now
So it's
kind
really
of in the second realm, right? The eudaimonic, with the goal, of course, to become the inner happiness. Anyway, that's what I'm struggling with, living with
yeah,
fear.
well, I relate because I've spent most of my life feeling fearful and then just going at it full ball like a bull at a gate, trying to overcome it just through sheer bloody mindedness, and so I've actually forced myself into dangerous situations and to just overcome that kind of fear, not in a very compassionate way now I think about it. But what's really interesting in Tibetan Buddhist psychology is that fear is not a disturbing emotion in the sense that it's not an affliction. It's not an afflicted state of mind. It's a sensation. And actually, it's neutral because sometimes it's useful to us and other times it's debilitating. So we'll actually delve much deeper into this when we talk about anxiety in the future classes. But what's really relevant, what you brought up, which is actually about today's topic, that when we are motivated or bullied around by fear, we can't get any benefit from it. And so it's kind of like we miss the boat. So what we're going to have a look at are what are called the 8 worldly concerns today, which is pretty much about how they distract us. So when we're fearful of losing something, for instance, then we can't. Then it completely debilitates us, and we can't make a judgment about whether that thing's worth it or not. We can't make a judgment about whether the next thing coming along is worth it or not because we're tossed around by fear. And now, what's underneath fear is attachment. So, actually, attachment is viewed as the afflictive emotion. How do we know we've got attachment? Apart from a feeling of dissatisfaction and craving, is that we have fear. We have fear of losing something. We have fear of change. And so how attachment works to overwhelm us and to ruin everything that we have, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. So hopefully by the end of today, you would have got below the fear to what's really going on. Fear is a secondary emotion, like anger, it's a secondary emotion. And so really, if we want to tackle it, it's not by getting rid of the fear, it's by looking at its cause. And so for that, we need to kind of look a little bit deeper. Also last week, we can see how precarious our happiness is, that we might think everything is fine, but we're not separate from the world. We're intimately involved in the world. And so the world changes and then our whole life changes and we have no control over it. And that's the thing about hedonic happiness, but also the mental states of happiness that rely on external conditions being good. It makes our existence very precarious. The other thing too, that if our main focus is on just feeling good and not feeling bad, being fearful when we're feeling bad, being fearful that we're going to lose feeling good, we can see how egocentric this kind of sense of well-being is, because we ourselves personally, if we bemoan what's happened to the world, if you're devastated at the state of the American election, in a way, what's happening is we're begrudging 170 million people's happiness. It's very egocentric, isn't it? Our sense of happiness is about us. And it's a very fine line where we find that we begrudge anyone who's different from us, who disagrees with us. So how can we begrudge the happiness of 170 million Americans? We don't have to agree with them. We can be horrified at how misguided people are. But what happens is, because it's all tangled up, we start begrudging them their sense of happiness and well-being. So that kind of egocentricity also comes from us just being concerned with just feeling good. You know, really what it does is it makes things really quite basic, and we miss out on the nuances of our best self, of our potential for opening our heart to others. So the biggest disaster would be to cut others out of our heart, wouldn't it? People we disagree with, to cut them out of our heart. Then we have no chance of bringing anything to the world because we've cut off our fellow brothers and sisters. So it's hard to find common ground, but we absolutely have to, or we won't be able to develop any of those more stable sense of happiness. It's just going to depend on vanquishing our enemies. So we're going to take the long road. It's the stable road. So thank you, Peggy, for bringing that up, because the fears.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to look at how the 8 worldly concerns distract us, and a lot of them are fear-driven. How to keep a level head so that we aren't fear-driven. The power of setting our intention, and I'd say actually resetting our intention or adjusting our intention, and how then we end up with goals that actually reflect and support our values. Because we say we believe in this and that, but that doesn't matter what we believe in. It's how we act. It's how we live our life. That's where it really tells, isn't it? So how to actually set some realistic goals and then be able to enjoy the results of those. So let's start with a meditation. It's called the Feeling Tone Meditation. It comes from a lady called Martine Batchelor. And so just to deepen our motivation, our purpose for being here today, and to do that, we've got to acknowledge where we're at. We've got to be able to relax first and see what's going on without panicking, without judgment. So to do this, take a nice deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and as you breathe out, let go of tensions and worries. Just release them. If they're really important, you can pick them up later. Feel how you're stable in your seat. Become aware of the natural rhythm of your breathing. And as you bring your focus inwards, just ask, how do you feel at this moment? So without judging or telling a story, as if you were a weather reporter, what's the internal weather like today? Do you experience a pleasant feeling tone as you're sitting in ease? Is the feeling somewhat unpleasant Maybe you're feeling agitated, restless. Or as nothing's happening at the moment, maybe you're a bit bored, a bit blah. So if that's the case, you could use this neutral feeling tone to rest in the calming rhythm of the breath. If you've been feeling buoyant or happy, try to experience these feelings without grasping at them, without wanting to hold them, without wanting more, without worrying if they'll disappear. Just simply enjoying them in a relaxed manner. With each in-breath, appreciate the feeling. And with each out-breath, release that good feeling to the world. Or if you're feeling a little low and grey, try to accompany that feeling with compassion. Knowing that feeling without sinking into it, without identifying it as you, just accompanying it with a sense of compassion. Without fighting, without panicking. You're not reducible to any one feeling. You're not your negative mind states. So as if you were your own compassionate companion. Notice, what do you feel in the solar plexus? Notice the texture of that feeling, even before giving it a name. And now breathe softly into it. Let that unpleasant feeling flow through you without fighting it, keeping your body relaxed. Notice any storyline in the mind that accompanies your emotional sensations. Any accompanying inner dialogue, and see if you can let go of that storyline. Just winding it back and simply being aware of your feeling tone in an open, non-judgmental way. And so regardless of your feeling tone, then within this spaciousness, this calm, we can set our motivation to be able to bring harmony to our own mind, to those of everyone we encounter, to encourage the natural flourishing of ourselves, of others, and to be able to bring all of our enlightening qualities to fruition. And so with this motivation, then we can wholeheartedly engage in the class. So take a nice deep breath again, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And let's dive in. So our first slide for the day, why we bite the hook. Why do we get sucked into this hedonic happiness? Why do we chase after these ephemeral pleasures? What distracts us from this deep, lasting happiness that we seek? How come we get distracted? And so, in short, preoccupation with worldly matters. So worldly matters, don't think of it as a value judgment or being moralistic or somehow the worldly is no good and the spiritual is good. They're both equally important, but we prioritize worldly matters over anything longer lasting and that comes from within. And so what does worldly mean? It means unstable, short-term, unreliable things. So worldly concerns are those things that change, that we have no control over, that we have to keep on feeding to get that sense of happiness. If it was a lasting sense of happiness, we'd just do the thing once and we'd be happy. End of story. So these worldly matters, it's like biting the hook over and over and over again. They have these terrible side effects that we somehow think are different. Why is this? How come we bite the hook? And it's because of cognitive fusion. We are enslaved to all of the worldly distractions because of cognitive fusion. So what is cognitive fusion? It's when we instinctually judge the worth of our experience by the momentary emotional sensation. So notice there I've put momentary emotional sensation. So it comes and it goes. It's a feeling. Is it anything more? What the cognitive fusion does is it says to us, if something feels bad, it must be bad. I've got to avoid it. Or if something feels good, it must be beneficial and I want it. So this is the cognitive fusion. We fuse the feeling and the meaning together as if they were the one thing. And I could add, for instance, if someone agrees with me, they must be good. I like them. If someone disagrees with me, holds different views from me, they must be bad. I dislike them. I don't want anything to do with them. So you can see it's a really kind of knee-jerk reaction. And why is it so powerful? Why are we enslaved? Because of this cognitive fusion. So can anyone think of something that feels bad but is good for you? Or alternatively, that feels good but's bad for you? Anything at all? Anything come to mind? While you're busy drawing a blank, I'll give you a really embarrassing example. Has anyone ever overeaten? Like, I love cheesecake. I crave cheesecake sometimes. And so then I go looking for cheesecake and I get cheesecake and I'll get a really big piece. And it's like the first few bites, they're fantastic, aren't they? And then it's like, oh yeah, get a little bit full. And then getting towards the end of the enormous piece of cheesecake. And I'm like, oh, feel a bit sick. Okay, so we've all had that experience, haven't we? But the really embarrassing thing is that I've had that experience more than once. So there it is, slave to cognitive fusion, isn't it? Feels good, therefore more must be better. It's going to be fantastic. Plus, I mean, all the other side effects that come from, so you put on weight and you've got too much fat in your system and, you know, the sweet, the sugar hit, all of those kinds of things. So there it is. We may be an intelligent person, but how we act is not intelligent. Why? Because of cognitive fusion. Someone else had their hand up that had something to share. Oh, Georgia, yeah, go for it.
Yes, hello, and sorry I'm off video.
That's
One
okay.
thing that I find is social media. I know it's not good for my mood. It distracts me from things like reading and being present in the moment. But in the moment, that hit of whatever it is, dopamine or something that of getting, the input, the colors, the pictures, the funny videos, the infinite scroll, all those things that are designed to keep you on there. And then before you know it, it's you've spent 2 hours of your evening on it, and you feel bad, and often you feel
And you
worse
feel
about
bad at the end.
yourself.
Yeah.
You feel worse about the world. It's overall it's a bad experience, but it is very, very hard to stop.
It's a fantastic example, Georgia, and that's exactly why, because we have this cognitive fusion that we're so involved in that feeling, and the feeling is good because it's an addiction. It's an addiction allergy cycle, actually, just like alcoholism or gambling. And so we get so involved in it that we can know it's bad for us and we cannot stop. We feel how bad it is, and yet we cannot stop. And this is the real tragedy. Of course, it's designed like that. It's designed to be addictive. But why do we suffer from that addiction? Why can't we pull ourselves out of it? Is actually because of our beholdenness to attachment and fear, and these 8 worldly concerns that we'll have a look at in a moment. So yes, that's a real biggie, and of course, it's bigger than, say, diet, or even bigger than just one-on-one relationships, because of the huge amount of people involved, and because of the speed, the contagion is much faster. So it is something. It's a real monster that we've let out of the bottle there and can't put back in. So how do we deal with it? We have to give ourselves some kind of immunity so we don't get sucked in, and that's what we'll have a look at. So thanks, Georgia. Anyone else? Anything else that we have cognitive fusion about? Any other ideas come to mind? Perhaps when we get into it, we'll have. Okay, let's have a look at these 8 worldly concerns. I want to tell you this story just before we do. So, with this trying to be balanced, trying not to have cognitive fusion, especially about who I like or who I dislike. So in my classes, I really try and think anyone who I'm talking about, or anyone I use as an example, I try and think those people are there in my class, so I don't inadvertently offend anybody. And so when I was thinking about the election, and I've tried to be equanimous and non-judgmental. And a couple of years ago, I got a real boost because I was leading a class on overcoming disturbing emotions. And in amongst, when we were talking about social media and things, it turned out that I had these 2 lovely ladies of what you call women of a certain age, beautifully done hair, makeup, a few wrinkles. They were pals. They were coming for their daytime kind of adventure out to the Buddhist Center, and they were MAGA supporters. They were Trump supporters. They were like dyed in the wool, make America great again. They thought Trump was fantastic. So they sat on the one side of the room, and on the other side of the room, I had this young couple that were coming with piercings and different color hair, and they were members of Extinction Rebellion. And I just thought, how good is this? I must be having some form of equanimity because I've got both in the room, and they're both enjoying the class, and they're getting on with each other. So this is what we should be aiming at in our life, right? To go beyond whether I like or dislike, whether I'm fearful or attached, whether I agree or not agree. What do we have in common? So what we have in common, what we all had in common was this wish to be a good person, to make an impact on the world that was beneficial. Everybody really cared about the world, but how we thought about it was completely different. So this cognitive fusion means that when we think about things differently from each other, then we end up hating each other. You can see how it goes, just slides into that. So how do we not hate each other is by forgetting about having the distinction be what we believe or agree or disagree with and get to something much more fundamental, which is human emotion. The need for human beings to matter, to be appreciated, to have a good life, all of those things. Undoubtedly, that's what we all share in. So what wrecks it? How come we lose track of that all the time in a blink of an eye? I just have to look at a politician and I've lost it, so. So the 8 worldly concerns. So these are concerns that are unstable. And so if we have our whole life driven by them, we're going to be in big trouble. So they come in pairs. So the first pair is that we're always seeking pleasure and we're always avoiding pain. We don't even have to think about it. It's just what we do. We're biologically hardwired for this. We're constantly trying to feel comfortable, to adjust our sense of comfort. And because when we're here in this class, we can all wriggle around, it's okay. We feel everything's fine. But if you're in a situation where you could not wriggle, you might have been in a Vipassana meditation course where you couldn't wriggle and your legs hurt so much you think you're going to die. Suddenly, when we cannot adjust our comfort levels all the time, then we become aware of the pain. We have the other pair of gain and loss. We like a bargain. We like to get more things. It's very hard to let go of things. Even when we want to declutter, it's hard to declutter. And we hate the sense of loss. The amount of money that guys spend on trying to not go bald to stave off the inevitable, we just can't bear the sense of loss or deterioration. Praise and blame is another pair where we continuously seek admiration and approval. And especially social media is like this, isn't it? We just crave it. If we don't get it, we almost feel invisible. And yet, when we receive the trolling, the abuse, the criticism, where we get blamed for things, we cannot bear it. We want the praise and approval of our parents. We want their input. When they also give other kinds of input, like they criticize us, no way, we're going to cut them out of our life. And the last pair, success and failure. So we think success is a good thing, that it reflects on our worth as a human being, this reputation, fame and status. We want to be successful. And if we fail, we also, if we fail a test, we feel a failure as a human being. If we make a mistake, we take it personally. So these 8 sets of pairs. We can just backtrack a little bit on them and just think that, the really basic one, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, this can really backfire on us. Has anyone, for instance, had a toothache and put off going to the dentist? Like the pain of the dentist is so much more frightening that we just avoid it. No, I hate the dentist. I'm not going. And then after how many days and your tooth starts swelling up and you can't speak properly, and it's like, oh no, now I really have to go. And so then you go to the dentist and they're like, why didn't you come in earlier? So that's an obvious one that many of us have probably done and we can probably forgive ourselves for. we also do this in relationships too, don't we? We avoid the difficult conversation because we just don't know. Now's not a good time. Don't talk to me. Now's not a good time. And it's never a good time because it's an unpleasant thing. You'll never want to do it. So we put it off, we put it off, and we put it off until the person leaves. It's a big shock. Why? What happened? So it's a really deep instinctual thing. And same with the pleasure side of things. We just like, oh, give me that, give me more cake. Any kind of drug addict or alcoholic, myself included, it's this thought of it's going to bring me pleasure, that pleasure comes from outside of me. And the more I have, the better I'm going to feel. And so you go for the quick hit. So luckily for me, I did notice that it was becoming toxic. But I think, like I said last week, my ex-husband, he could not stop grasping after that pleasure. And so he died of alcoholism. And he's an incredibly smart, intelligent person. But it's such a deep imperative, if we don't investigate that urge to think that something that is pleasant is necessarily good, or something that's unpleasant is necessarily bad, we can see how we get into trouble. So do you have any questions or comments about this so far? Is it making some sense? No, it's all going okay. Make sure you put your hands up if you have anything. So we've got another pair, then gain and loss. So I was thinking about this one too, because there's so many online scams, aren't there? And how come people fall for those online scams? So one of them, I was reading in the New Yorker magazine, actually, of a study that they did of people that fell for those scams of sending money and then sending more money and more money. And some people end up sending about $50,000, $100,000, $200,000. And then they kind of investigated, well, who are these people? And they were professional people. They were so well educated, smart, professional people sending their money off to these scams to like meet me at the gravestone at midnight kind of thing. And it's like, why? How is this possible? And it's because, and this is what the scammers know, once you engage and once you send that $5 just to open the account, or there's something, and I'll repay you the $5, but just put the $5 in for now, whatever little thing, once you've put in that $5, you've got a choice when they ask you for more money. You can either go, oh, I've been had, and lose that money, or you can think, oh, yeah, sounds legit, and give them more. And then in that way, you're still thinking of it as an investment. So then you've given $10, then you've given $20. Now, when they ask for more, it's like, gee, if I admit that I've been had, I've lost $20. But if I think, oh, no, that sounds right, I'm going to get the thing, you put in more. And so then it escalates up to like $100,000 because, and I think it's called throwing good money after bad. We don't want to cut our losses. We want to live in this sense that I'm still investing. It's still good. I haven't lost anything at all. And so scammers know this psychology and they take advantage of it every minute of the way. There's another couple of things with gain and loss. I've read stories too of people who've been mugged and the robbers on the street are like, give me your wallet, give me all your rings, your watch. And they've gone, no, you're not having my wedding ring. This means a lot to me. It's sentimental value. It costs $5,000. You're not having my wedding ring. So this urge to not lose. And so then what happens? Something worse. You may lose your life. You may be severely beaten up. So the attachment to just not wanting to release, it can really backfire on us. And that one of the false economy, if you buy two, get one free or something, yay, what a bargain. Fall for this one all the time. I didn't want any. So gain and loss, it's there all the time. Loss aversion. Praise and blame, and success and failure. So these ones are a little bit trickier, aren't they? So praise and blame. One of the things about that is because, again, cognitive fusion, we think if someone says something about us, it makes it so. If someone says, you're a horrible person, you think you're a horrible person. When we think about it, people can say whatever they want. We have no control over it. Does it change who I am? No, that's entirely up to me. So why does it stick? Why do we take it on board? Especially with blame and abuse. Why do we take that on board? So it's this addiction to adjusting the world, that we just spend time with people that praise us, and we discount and get rid of anybody who disagrees with us, anybody who criticizes our actions. So you might think, well, what's wrong with that? But when we look at some extreme examples, and so rock stars are extreme examples of this. Someone like, say, Michael Jackson, or I don't know, any rock star that you think of, that surround themselves with what you call yes men. All of us, surround yourself with everybody who agrees with you and praises you, and no one who challenges you. Look what happens. You die of excess. That's what happens. So in the olden days, we heard how kings have a court jester. That court jester was there to help the king, and the king needed them. And those court jesters got away with saying the most outrageous things. And so that way the king could tell what are people really saying. But you've got to be quite courageous to be able to hear that. No one likes getting feedback, especially work feedback, performance reviews. We dread them, don't we? Why? I mean, just because it's an unpleasant feeling. But actually, if we get feedback, if it's true, if we're pretty crap at something, or if we've got some behavior that's, no good, it's better that we know. And just because it's coming from a source that we don't like, and it's not packaged nicely, like our best friend or our, might say, oh dear, Miffi, you're a really wonderful person. There's just this one little thing, perhaps you can change. Like someone just comes out and says it. It's just the packaging that we don't like, the unpleasant feeling. But actually, it's better that we know. We'll feel far more confident and relaxed if we know the worst. So much better. And of course, craving praise. So you can see how all of these things, we get our sense of worth from outside of us. You can see how precarious that is, can't you? So if you've ever been on social media, oh yeah, there's a like, there's a thumbs up, there's a like, there's a like. Oh my God, there's someone who's done a thumbs down. That's what sticks out to us, isn't it? So how come the praise doesn't land? How come it doesn't stick? And it's because because it comes from outside of us, it will never be enough. It doesn't matter how much praise we get. If we don't feel worthwhile, the praise isn't going to make us feel worthwhile for more than a flash, more than a second. And again, this is how come we get scammed so easily, because all someone has to do is flatter you and you love them. You think they're great. And the last one, success and failure. So this is a really big one too. And I mean, when you look at the great inventors of the world, and you just see the courage that they had to keep on going under continuous failure, and just that determination, I just take my hat off to them that they could keep on going without being overwhelmed by a sense of being a loser, by a sense of failure, without caring whether people were laughing at them, without caring whether everyone said they're an idiot and it'll all be a total waste. Just that determination, on and on and on and on and on, until finally we get the light bulb. We get those incredible inventions that now we all take for granted, that came through massive courage to persevere in the face of failure. So how do those people do that? They don't have the cognitive fusion that if they've failed at something, they are a failure. We have that cognitive fusion. We fail at something, we're a failure. See how it meshes together? Someone who's really involved in the experiment, in the invention, a failure is just something more interesting. If there's not the cognitive fusion of you are that failure. Failure gives you more information. It's more exciting. You keep going even more. And then success, well, of course, in a way we crave success and fame. And then I just think of all the great artists and musicians and how many of them were recognized in their lifetime. Hardly anybody. So again, if you have success, what it does is it corrupts your motivation. Then you start doing the art for the adulation. Then you start pandering to the market. And then suddenly, from having something to say, now you have nothing to say. Whereas the great benefit of not having success when you're an artist is it keeps you pure. You stick with what it is that you're investigating or trying to communicate, and it doesn't matter what people say back, whether they like it or not like it. You've made the point as clearly as you can because you're not beholden to the response. So these 8 worldly concerns, the pairs of what we seek, what we try and avoid, they're quite superficial, aren't they? And they're driven by this just not wanting a bad feeling. So in a way, they're driven by attachment, seeking those pleasant things, and fear, aversion, not wanting the unpleasant. And while instinctually that may be the case, what happens is that we draw a meaning into that and our whole life becomes dominated by that, and we suffer really terrible consequences. We're taken away from those deeper levels of happiness. So if I was to ask you, what's the ratio of your life that you spend involved in these worldly concerns? And say, what ratio do you spend on your really deep long-term goals? Can you put a ratio to it? Is it like becoming clear? It's not like in a judgment, kind of like, you're terrible people. No, it just shows that through habit, we spend so much of our time and energy on these superficial things that we neglect actually what matters to us. And usually what really matters to us isn't those things, if we really think about it. Another way that we can think about this is that of the things that really matter to you, how much of your daily activities support them? And how much of your daily activities just get frittered away in these kind of worldly considerations? Now, surely there's some questions or comments. Oh, yeah, Damien, go for it.
Hey, Miri, I wasn't quite ready to go first, but yeah, ready to go. So I was wondering, as you go through the 8 worldly concerns, it seemed like a lot of them were just based around ego. And then I found that avoiding any loss and fear of failure can be quite similar.
Yep, that's right. They are similar. Fear of failure and avoiding loss. Yes. And mostly we are terrified of that because we've added something to the story. So, for instance, with failure, we've added on not just a failure in the thing, but it's like it becomes a global failure as a human being. And so a lot of fear will drive that. What was the first thing that you said about?
It just seemed like the 8 worldly concerns are very egotistical.
Yeah. So Buddhism, there's something similar to the concept of ego, but there are slight different nuances. And so what I find easier to think about is that what we're driven by is this sense of a self that is independent, that's permanent, that this sense of me. And mostly this is it's a false construct, this sense of who we are being like that. We don't exist in that way. But grasping onto this sense of self, all about me, being independent, me first, what it does is it makes us feel very isolated. It puts us up in opposition to the rest of the world. We feel disconnected. And so because of feeling bad like that, then we grasp in a panic and to bolster up this sense of self. So we need adulation, we need fame, we need people to appreciate us. If people don't appreciate us, we feel invisible, like we don't exist. So this false sense of self is the real the real mistake that we have, and then grasping at it and trying to build it up, which is what these worldly concerns do. They kind of work from the outside inwards. And so they make it even worse. They make us feel even more isolated. The more we chase after, fame, fortune, and adulation, the less satisfied we are because it doesn't come from out there. We get more and more from out there, feeding this false sense of self, but it doesn't come from out there. If our own sense of who we are isn't right, it's just like this bottomless pit. So this ego, maybe egocentricity is a better word rather than ego, which is like a Freudian or Jungian term. Egocentricity, though, of everything just being about me, as if we're isolated and independent from the world, as if we never change.
Thank you.
So I hope that helps. I don't know if that makes any sense, Damien.
It does. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Jessica, yeah. Oh, hang on.
No, that was
Yes.
me. Thanks. I'm having trouble figuring out how to do the raised hand thing. I think
Oh,
Georgia
that's okay. Physical hand is great.
Okay, I think Georgia had her little yellow hand up though before me. I have a question
That's
about the
okay.
sense of self, but I don't want to preempt Georgia.
No, go for it. We'll have everybody. That's all right. Go for it, Jessica.
Okay, so sorry, Georgia. If like the sense of self that you're saying rooted in ourselves as individuals is the false sense of self, what is the true sense of self? Understanding that you're probably getting to that by the end of the course, but can you give us like a preview now?
Well, it's kind of the opposite, which is that we are interconnected, whether we feel it or not. That who we are, it's like when people say it takes a village to raise a child. That we are a product of our environment, our friends, our education, every single teacher that put, effort into us, all the nurses, our whole
Right.
culture going back decades. So we are connected whether we feel it or not. And we do have things in common with people. So on a really fundamental level that draw us close together. But when we look at these worldly concerns, it's all about competition. It's all about having more than other people or being famous in amongst all the ordinary people. So that puts us in a competition. So it's almost like looking more realistically at how we exist as human beings, which is highly interdependent, which is largely through the kindness of others, through the efforts of our entire history of civilization. And not only that, but we're fluid beings. We change all the time. So how we feel about ourselves actually changes according to how much sugar we have in our system. I mean, how crazy is that? So are we going to base how we feel about ourselves on just a feeling? Or are we going to base it on observation, reasoning, logic, appreciation, something much more than just whether we've got sugar in our system? So that means actually really looking and investigating deeply what are our qualities. And our qualities aren't how famous we are or whether we're bald or not. They're not our qualities, are they? They're just those external, hedonic happiness. So very good question, Jessica. Thank you. And Georgia, how about you?
I had a question, and I apologize if I missed it. I'm having some connectivity issues. But what about like the pleasures associated with like relationships? Like, for example, investing in a romantic relationship, it makes you feel good. You know, that person likes you, but that is, in many times that's a fleeting thing. It's unreliable. It's all those things. Things may change. Same as friends, even same as like parenting,
Yeah.
like is parenting a worldly pleasure if your child may grow up and not have a relationship with you? Or
Yeah.
like I don't quite understand how things that I think are very meaningful, I can understand like ego and adulation and status, but these other things
Yeah,
that
for the
are
relationships.
worldly pleasures, but
Yeah.
I do think are very integral to my sense of self.
Yeah, so we'll have a look at relationships in a moment, say romantic relationships. But in terms of, say, parenting, so most of the time, the sense of parenting is a hedonic thing. So it's like you want the pleasure and you don't want pain. Now, when the baby first comes and screams all the time and everything, you have to go deeper than that. And you have to remember you love them, even though you're in pain. So that forces you. But a lot of times the satisfaction that comes from having, a good kid or a smart kid, even if they're not good or even if they're not smart, you tell yourself they are. So that's the hedonic happiness. It's kind of reliant on the circumstances being right. And then when that kid goes off the rails, some parents rally and really in their heart know they love them and just try and do the best that they can. And other parents go, "You're no child of mine," and they disown them. So what kind of response we have is determined by whether our sense of self and well-being is reliant on our kids being pleasant or good or a success. Or if we're okay, we still love them even though they've got their own trajectory, and some kids really go off the rails. So attachment, pretty much what it happens with attachment is that we expect things to go well. And because of that, because that's really unrealistic, we're worldly beings. We have our ups and downs. When things go badly, that's when it can actually bring out the worst in us instead of the best in us. It takes a huge effort for it to bring the best out in us. So let's have a look at how we get deeper than those worldly concerns. And it's about our motivation, what drives us, and we've got to be quite courageous in investigating this. So a good motivation has power. The reason we do something has power, but it's what kind of thing that we are. What kind of things driving us, whether we know it or not. So if we have a really clear goal, our success will be really strong. Now, this picture here is a picture of someone doing a long jump, And so one of the Geshes here at Library Tonka said, setting your motivation in the morning is like the run-up to the long jump. Everything depends on the run-up, because once you're launched, once you're in the air, there's very little you can do about it. So it depends whether you balk right at the end, whether you lift off, or whether you have a good, strong run-up and then you have a huge, big, you're launched into the day. If we trip over our feet, if we have a failure of courage, if we're ridden by doubts, that run up to the long jump won't be very good. If we're really clear why we're doing something and we adjust our motivation, then we have a strong, clear goal, and that motivation, what drives us, it will carry us through the day, just like this long jump. So a couple of interesting things about this. In Buddhism, it's not like you second guess, oh, maybe I've got some deep psychological reason that I'm not aware of. That you just adjust your motivation. You start where you are, you recognize what it is that's driving me, and then you adjust it. It's really simple. It means we can change. We don't have to second guess ourselves after adjusting it. So one of the ways that we can adjust our motivation is to ask why. Why am I doing this? And you ask why 3 times. And so to deepen it. So it's kind of like if you say, well, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Why do you get up? Why did you get up today and come to this class and not just stay in bed all day? So you might have gotten up because you need to go to the loo. So that's not really a strong enough motivation to have a day, because many of us will just go back to bed then. Maybe you wake up in a panic. Oh my God, I've got a test, or I've got to pay a bill, or I've got to do this thing. And so you're driven by just immediate time-consuming circumstances. Maybe what gets you out of bed is not what gets you out of bed. Maybe it's depression and you stay in bed and you can't face the world. There isn't something that gets you out of bed. It could just be habit. It could be because other people's demands on you, kids and things. It could be, wow, because you're going to go on a holiday. So all these different things, they're the immediate things that get us out of bed. But we've got to ask why. Why am I going on the holiday? If we don't ask why, that holiday will have its ups and downs, won't it? Because when we go on holiday, wherever you go, there you are. You've brought all your worries with you. You've brought work with you. You've brought your family arguments with you. And now it's even more stressful. So we have to ask why. Why am I going on the holiday? Why do I have children? And when you come up with that answer, then you ask why again. So minimum 3 times. So it might be, I have children because I accidentally got pregnant. Well, lots of people, I'd say half the world, that's why they have kids. They'll never tell their kids that though. But, from talking to everybody here at Library Tonka Centre, that's pretty much the case. And so then you make your peace with that. So then it's, well, why? Well, then it's, well, here's maybe something to make my life worthwhile. So it's this need. I need something to do that's meaningful, that will be all encompassing, that will move me. So personally, I've often thought, well, people have kids because they can't do art. I did tell this to someone, a parent, and they were mortified and really, really offended. So I'm saying that with a caveat that that's just my opinion, and it came out kind of in a bit brutal way. But because I look at what artists struggle with, and I think that's, it's whole world issues. But even then, whether you're an artist, whether you're a parent, you've got to ask again, why? And hopefully we come down to helping others, whatever it is that we do. And that helping others, that is below those worldly concerns. And it will get us through the ups and downs, and it'll get us through the parts we don't like. If we just stick to, because I need a sense of fulfillment, we're in big trouble, because you might get that sense of fulfillment and something to do to fill your days for years and years and years, but then your kids leave home, and now what do you have? Empty nest. Bereft. And occasionally children die before their parents, and then it's even more heartrending. So we've got to really set our motivation deep, ask why, until you come to these fundamental, deep human values, those deeper levels of happiness. So my question then about this that I found, so you ask why 3 times. When you're setting your motivation, you've got to include yourself, your own well-being. You've got to also include the well-being of others equally. That's those different levels of happiness. And here's the question: what would you be doing right now if you knew you could not fail? So this really speaks to the fear, doesn't it? If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you be doing? I mean, hopefully things spring to mind, and then you can see, oh, okay, now I just have to deal with the fear. So let's have a look. Now, there's 2 types of motivation. There's what's called causal motivation, which is what drives us. It's really deep. It's usually instinctual, and if we haven't brought our attention to it, it just keeps driving us without us knowing. And then there's momentary, the motivation in the moment, how we react at the time. It's very reactive most of the time. So with this, when we're looking at motivation, the point here is that it's not actually what we're doing, but it's the why. We could have a really mundane job. We could be a cleaner, but if we have a deep reason why, that's what brings the meaning. What's the motivation? So what drives us normally, a causal motivation in our ordinary life, the default is usually hedonic happiness. We just want a good life. We want to be happy. We want to be well fed, all of those things. What other causal motivations might drive us is the yearning for the approval of our parents, of measuring up, that kind of appreciation. We may have a fear of poverty. We may want to beat the competition. We may love travel, just the change of travel. So there's many kind of causal motivations, ordinary ones that are driving us, just bringing up the kids. And depending on those, then when we have the motivation in the moment, something changes and we respond. That's going to be colored by our causal motivation. Our causal motivation is like a baseline. So if we're in a bad mood and something changes, we might react badly. So it might be a malicious motivation in the moment. If we have a causal motivation that's quite unstable with the worldly concerns, then someone offends us, we feel really emotionally unstable. We take it personally instead of just going, oh, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. So we're really influenced by that. So a Buddhist way of adjusting our motivation, so we just bring awareness to it, is by trying to make it altruistic, include the benefit of others as well as ourselves. The best, of course, is a bodhicitta motivation. So not just the benefit of others, but the ultimate benefit of others, bringing them to liberation and enlightenment. Really good non-religious motivations, of course, looking after the family, looking after others, being able to contribute to our society. to leave something worthwhile, to make something worthwhile. Just simply to protect others. You might have a job as a first responder, but you might have a job as a cleaner, which also protects others. Hygiene is what's kept us alive so far. Just a wish to give back, pay it forward in whatever way, just a really small way, just a smile. So a way to adjust our motivation, fail-safe way every day to say, today I'm going to try and benefit whenever I can. And at the very least, I will not harm. So this is the minimum we should be doing as a human being. So then we become a safe person to be with. No matter what happens, we're not going to retaliate, but actually we're going to really try and benefit when we can. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples. Now, this is where we get to the one of the relationships, I think, Georgia, you're talking about, of functional and dysfunctional types of motivation. So we've got one example with sexuality and one becoming a doctor. So the causal motivation for sexuality, for having an affair, for having, a lover that is functional, so a functional one. You need both the causal motivation and the momentary one. So the causal motivation, is this human urge to connect, to share emotion, to give pleasure, to receive pleasure. This, human beings, we are social beings. If we don't have that kind of connection, we wither up and die. And that's totally fine. Then you also need a momentary motivation. You need some desire or lust. You need to actually desire the person, or you're not going to end up in bed together. You're just going to end up as platonic friends otherwise. Okay, so the momentary motivation has to be there. And that's just a nice functional way of having a relationship. But many times what we find is we've got a dysfunctional relationship. So the momentary motivation might be all nice and romantic and attentive and polite and have all the trappings. But what's driving it? What's driving it is a mercenary need for me and my pleasure. What's driving it might be the need to have power over others. How come so many men end up with women that are way less intelligent than them? Because there's that need to not be intimidated. There might be this incredible need, this narcissistic drive to have your greatness reflected back at you over and over again because it's a worldly concern. Or it just might be fear and neediness. I don't want to be alone. So you settle for anybody. So on the surface, when we first get together, it may look fantastic. The first flush of love is great. It's a heap of fun. But after that 3-month mark, then we can tell what's been driving it. Was it all those unconscious things driven by the worldly concerns? If we let that continue to drive us, all of our relationships will end in disaster. But what we've got a chance then after that first flush of romance is to actually deepen the reason why we're together, thinking of those levels of happiness. And it's to do with what do you bring to the relationship? Not what can I get, what can I contribute? What do I bring as a human being? How can I help that person? How can we connect? How can I be there for them? And then if you've got some kind of sexual attraction, then you might end up still being together. But even then, even if you don't, there's so many marriages where you no longer have a sexual attraction, but you're really best friends and it's a really functional marriage and it works really well. Why? Because there's that basic human connectivity and kindness. So you can also see why you can have a fling with someone, you can have a really passionate relationship, but also feel so alone and hollow because of that, because the motivation, the causal motivation is that real unconscious one of just the worldly concerns, all about what's in it for me. And you can see how it ruins a good relationship, or it ruins the potential for a good relationship. So does that make sense? does it kind of maybe clear up some things if you think back to your previous relationships of what went wrong or what went right? Maybe. Well, everyone's too shy to say anything about their relationship, so I'll just talk about mine.
I'll
Oh, yeah, go
so
for it.
determining whether it's dysfunctional in yourself or the other person, how would you advise going about that?
I just look at those worldly concerns and seeing what the driver is. Is the driver just hedonic happiness? Just what do I get? Is it just to do with pleasures and satisfaction from outside? Or is it about the relationship, the connectivity? Is it about what we can share? Because many times, like when we want a relationship, it's like, I want a relationship. I want to be in a relationship and I want all these things and I want the person to be like this and this and this. And very rarely do we think, I want to be in a relationship. This is what I have to offer. I'm a good driver. I'm great at cooking. I'm really patient. You know, uh, I'm fine being by myself half the time. We very rarely think, what do I have to offer? Well, we're so needy for a relationship that we can't even recognize what do we have to offer. So I think it's if you recognize the worldly concerns and then get below them.
Right.
It's a
And
good
then
enough start anyway.
how can you tell what the motivation is for the other person?
You can't except by just living through it and just seeing, well, what is motivating them. So if the other person, say, is very needy, we're all needy. But if that's the only thing, if their whole sense of self relies on you telling them they're fantastic, it's not enough, because you will never be able to tell them that they're fantastic and it will never be enough. So you have to kind of be quite realistic to see, of course, we're with someone because we see the qualities in them that they don't recognize themselves. And that's why we're together. And so then you recognize those qualities and you tell them they're fantastic. And then they've got a chance to grow into them and appreciate them. So you have to see how it pans out. And so many times we might end up with, breaking up with someone because they can't go from just needing your adoration to bringing forth their own qualities. So you might just end up kind of being a supportive friend for them, but it's not a balanced relationship. Together, like that symbiotic relationship, they're both totally beholden on each other and depend on each other for their self-worth forever. And those also end in disaster because one will die before the other. That's the best possible scenario. And then what do? Now you're only half a human being. But the other one is that if you do rely on the other person for your sense of happiness, eventually you will be disappointed. And then it flips to hatred. So if you've ever hated an ex, that's because of that attachment. And it's flipped over to hatred. And it's been, your whole relationship has been dependent on their adulation of you and their, appreciation of you. And when it changes, it becomes unacceptable. So we can kind of, all of the suffering and the problems that arise, they're like little red flags to us that we've got sucked into the worldly concerns. So it takes some investigation, Damien.
Yeah, I'm starting to hear that. But around the attachment thing, last little bit, does that delve into narcissism?
Yeah, narcissism. That's that having to continuously feed that false sense of self. So why we need to continuously feed that sense of self is because it is mistaken. So it is a black hole. And so then we get addicted to having constant outside appreciation and acknowledgement and everything revolving around us. And that addiction just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Narcissism is a terrible addiction. But what drives it is at its root is this mistaken idea of who we are. And for that, you'll have to come to my other course, Overcoming Healing Depression and Anxiety, because we go really in depth into that. But any Buddhist teachings on selflessness, this false sense of self, will kind of show how it just becomes this big craving narcissistic black hole. I mean, believe me, I've been there. I've lived like that. I've felt it. And it is an incredible addiction. So the way out of that is through analysis.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. So then quickly, let's have a look at the one, say, becoming a doctor. So the functional reason to become a doctor, you have a causal motivation, which would be the wish to help, the wish to alleviate suffering. That's, you'd hope that's the reason someone would become a doctor. But that alone is not enough, because when you're studying to be a doctor, and how many years does it take to become a doctor? And a lot of those years are spent studying incredibly tedious, boring things, including statistics, anatomy, all of these things you've got to memorize. And it's so far removed from helping others. Every night that I'm studying there with my statistics, there are people dying on the streets, and I'm not helping anybody. So momentary, you've got to boost yourself up and think, I've just got to get through these stats. I've got to strive for the top grades. So you have to have that momentary motivation. But what drives it, what you remember, is I'm going to help others. That's why I'm doing all of this tedious stuff. And while I may not be saving lives tonight, I'm going to be able to save lives in the future. So the causal motivation supports the momentary one, which gets you through the hard times. So that's for a really good doctor, but I've been to some really terrible doctors, and so have my friends. And there's a dysfunctional way to become a doctor. And so the causal motivation could be for status. You got top grades at school, go and become a doctor. You may actually not like touching human beings. You may not like humans. You may not care about that. You might care about, bugs and rivers or painting. But here you are, your parents have pushed you in the idea of money, having a solid career, the family tradition, all of these things. I mean, they're really big causal motivations to becoming a doctor. Status, being a pillar of society, being important, all of those things. So that may be the underlying motivation. And so on the surface, when you're there helping people, the momentary wish, the wish to please, and they're friendly only if unchallenged. So I've been in a doctor's office where I've asked about a diagnosis. And probably because I asked without going, with a smile, they said, who are you to question me? Don't you know who I am? I'm the best actor on the eastern seaboard of Australia with this. How dare you question me? And I'm like, I'm just asking a question because I don't understand. How could you take it so personally? And in fact, I've had a friend who asked a surgeon about a particular surgery she was going to have, and he stormed out of the room and said, no one talks to me like that, and refused to be her surgeon. because she was asking questions and she was so anxious. She was asking questions with a really serious face, and he got intimidated by that. His authority was questioned, and that was unbearable. So the doctor I saw, he actually said to me, "Don't worry your pretty little head about that." Oh, God, someone actually said that in this day and age. So I just can't go and see male doctors over the age of 70. It's just like, no way. We just like had the worst chemistry whatsoever. But there you go. If your causal motivation isn't there to actually help others, if it's there for status, and while everybody's treating you as the important person, it's okay. But then someone like me comes along, oh, you can really lose your professional cool. So always get a second opinion. Now, I'm going to motor through the next couple of slides because we're going to go over. I really wanted to do a meditation today as well. So hopefully you can see now how under those worldly concerns is attachment. And what attachment does is it actually ruins everything good that we have. So what is attachment? Attachment is this cognitive fusion that says something feels good, therefore it is good. So it's just a feeling, that cheesecake, it feels good, it is good. But what happens? We overvalue it. We'll do anything for the cheesecake. It's biased and it sees only the good things, how yummy it is, forgets how sick I'm going to feel in about 3 minutes. And there's all these expectations and projections. If I don't get that cheesecake, my day is ruined. I was really looking forward to that cheesecake and now I'm miserable because I missed out and we don't have it. And now I can't even enjoy the company I'm with. So attachment is this mistaken mind. It's exaggerated. And it's the exaggeration that harms us. It's not that you like something. There's no problem in liking something, but it's the exaggeration that brings the problems. The cognitive fusion, I really love this picture of Magritte, with the apple and the guy. So cognitive fusion means we are enchanted by the appearances. We're enchanted by the praise. We're enchanted by the appreciation. We think it's actually going to change us and mean something. Cognitive fusion also means we conflate the people with their behavior. So if they treat us politely, if they give us presents, we think they're a good person. We add in a whole story underneath it, and we can't actually tell what that motivation is until we've been with them for a while. And we conflate pleasant experiences with the source of those experiences. So not only that, we think that our happiness actually comes from that person or from that cheesecake. We forget that our happiness comes because we have a capacity for happiness. It's just triggered by those things. But it's our capacity for happiness that means we're feeling good. So how do we keep a level head? If attachment ruins everything, even the happiness that we have, how do we keep a level head? Well, we've got to recognize the drawbacks of attachment. It ruins what we have because we're fearful of losing it. We can't even enjoy what's in the moment. And that mind of attachment thinks that our happiness comes from the external things, but actually it comes from a sense of peace within. Then we can enjoy things. If we feel worthwhile ourselves, then we can enjoy things. It's like the other way around. So being realistic, yet optimistic. How do we do that? Relax. Take the time to relax, to create some mental space, and then start analyzing things in a kind of informal, flexible way. So don't come at it like a bull at a gate like I did, but do it gently with compassion. Start analyzing what's really going on here. And remember, there's going to be an opportunity in every situation. those worldly concerns, they're just kind of like it's very reactive. We can, with just a little bit of mindfulness, we can find something good in a situation that will help us. And like we've talked about last week, don't sweat the small stuff. Life is fleeting. Focus on what matters. So even with relationships, I've noticed that everybody I've ever had a relationship with cannot cook and cannot drive. And I'm like, dang, it would have been much more convenient if my husband could drive or could cook. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to even expect that ever to happen, because what do I have instead? Something far more meaningful. Might be slightly more inconvenient life, but something far more meaningful, which is a real common interest in the Dharma, passion for the Dharma. So focusing on what actually matters rather than the little niggly things that are just the worldly concerns. So let's just do a really short meditation just to deepen this experience of these worldly concerns, so we can start recognizing them at play. So take a nice deep breath. Let out any tension, distraction. And we're going to explore the persistent patterns that consume our mind. So imagine first a seesaw constantly going up and down, tipping backwards and forth between pleasure and pain. In one moment, we're basking in fine food, music, friends. And the next moment, we're recoiling from the sting of indigestion, drunken arguments, exhaustion. Just as the seesaw cannot find perfect balance, our minds oscillate between grasping at what feels good and pushing away what's unpleasant. And turn your mind to a game of Monopoly. We frantically acquire properties and wealth driven by fear of loss. But as soon as we think we've won the game, our hard-earned assets can be snatched away again. Gain and loss, two sides of the same coin, forever in motion. Then cast your gaze to a weather vane, spinning in the winds of praise and blame. A light breeze of encouragement fills our sails, only to be followed by a gust of criticism that threatens to blow us off course. Our sense of self becomes tethered to the shifting opinions of others, never quite finding true north. And finally, picture a spotlight on a stage, the focus of attention and adoration, basking in the glory of fame. But just as quickly, the light can fade, leaving us in the shadows of disgrace, forgotten. The stage of life is ever-changing, alternating between the thrill of recognition and the pain of being forgotten. So these 8 worldly concerns, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, they are persistent undercurrents of the human experience. They tug at us, demanding our attention, feeding an endless cycle of attachment and aversion. But here in this moment, let us pause, breathe deeply, and observe these patterns with compassion, neither grasping nor rejecting, simply witnessing their ebb and flow. In this stillness, we may find freedom to live with equanimity, unbound by the whims of circumstance. So dedicate your efforts for the class and for this week and coming into the future to be able to develop that sense of equanimity, finding a deeper meaning in that ebb and flow. And then just bring your focus back to the room and summary in the homework. So we've looked at how the 8 worldly concerns distract us and corrupt us. They corrupt everything that's actually good and all those nascent qualities. We've looked at how we bite the hook of those worldly concerns, and then so much suffering comes along with it. We've looked at how cognitive fusion means we are a slave to the belief that our happiness comes from outside, from those things, that the source of our happiness is out there, and that attachment makes us actually miss out on enjoying the good things we already have because of our fear of losing them. How ironic is that? So it's really, if we can get rid of that, the exaggeration of attachment by thinking of others, by thinking of sharing all of our happiness, then we've got a chance at lasting happiness. So the homework, pages 7 and 9, there are reflection sheets, and I believe they are on aligning with your long-term goals and how to set the direction in life. And part of that is composing your own morning motivation, something that's uniquely authentic to you and that has all of those elements in it for self and others and short-term and long-term. And next week, we're going to look at trainings for optimal flourishing, meaning strengthening the 3 higher trainings: ethics, focus, and understanding. So it's been a long class. Thank you for sticking with it. I know we've gone over, but I really wanted to share the meditation with you just to, have that kind of more visceral feeling. And take care. And Susan, so glad you were with us today. Really nice to see you. And make sure next week you come along with questions, all right? Okay, good. I can see you nodding. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Miffi.